Okay, so we're ready to go. So in the break, I think those people that wanted questions answered did get them answered. At the moment, what we've got is some various motions floating about, and I have had an opportunity to talk with the General Manager just about his recommendation in his report, and just, I guess, you know, what the wider public or some of the negotiations going on at the moment in relation to Rototuna and the structure plan up there in relation to the MOE, which we do need to be cognisant of, in my view. So I think we've got a few floating around. Now, Councillor Mallett had a motion, which was essentially just the muni pools. Councillor Forsyth, where did you sort of get? I've talked to the General Manager and I'm happy just to put up some other wording, if you could put that up.
I have a second. You want me to whack up the...
I'll just get these up.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's Councillor Forsyth, that's what I recorded. Right, and then if you could just put the General Manager and I just had a discussion. I just might ask him just to clarify a couple of things in relation to sort of commitments or otherwise we might have made and other documents and things.
So, through you, Your Worship, just to be clear, the structure planning at Rototuna and the current development of a comprehensive development plan with the developer, which is a requirement of the district plan, we've done that as a landowner. So we've purchased under the Public Works Act community lands at Rototuna, and they've got land that they want to develop and get away a suburban centre with retail, all that sort of thing. And there's also MOE with the school. So we are jointly working with the developer there and on really designing the suburban centre, and included that as what was flagged in the structure plan was a library and also an aquatic centre and sports fields and a town square. So we've been working through that in good faith with the developer. So that really relates to number 3 in those recommendations, so that we are consistent with our good faith work with the developer around that comprehensive development plan, working through that process. So my advice would be that we should still include in the 30-year infrastructure plan provision for an aquatic facility at Rototuna in the 30-year infrastructure plan, and that was outlined at the briefing discussion last week with the blobs on the chart we had on the wall. The other one at the start, and just with Rototuna, there's also, we have collected some monies before the legislation changed for community facilities.
This is the DCs you're talking about?
DCs, that's correct. And I think Blair and Paul have outlined previously the expectations of those organisations or people who paid those development contributions and what they were collected for. So there's small sums, or some sums of money which were collected for those community facilities that were flagged in the structure plan, and obviously some were for citywide facilities. Now, obviously the legislation's changed since then, but we still have some obligation there. The shorter term one, the conundrum I think where councillors have got to prior to the lunch break, that accepting of the need, the capacity need, obviously the challenge is where we can fit this in, and I think the angst was probably, and frustration was that we elected members appear to want to do something sooner rather than year 8, but we're constrained fiscally in doing that, and thus our recommendations. And then obviously there's been some, I think Councillor Forsyth brought up, could there be some more work done looking at the Lido pool option, and Councillor McPherson talked about the Fairfield College option as well. We're suggesting maybe for the purposes of moving the LTP along and getting the consultation document locked down as well, that there is a sum of monies put in those outer years of the LTP, flagging that council has an intent around providing additional 25-metre pool capacity somewhere within the city, and obviously there is some time to go before that construction or whatever would actually happen. We've put in a number 2 there that staff report back prior to the development of the annual plan next year with options. So that actually gives us some time to actually look at, revisit some of the matters which were brought up today around some of those options. And that then, so flagged an intent, there is a provisional sum there, and there is some opportunity to revisit some of the options and suggestions being put forward today by elected members.
And that includes sort of the Fairfield Boys High partner pool,
Yep.
short-term option, the heating, the Lido pool, etc., whatever.
Yes.
Which perhaps aren't covered in
Yep.
depth in that, right?
So just over the break, Your Worship, Matthew and I have also gone upstairs and we've just gone back through all our reports and notes and budgets and things like that. So we have some of $95,000 for partner pools. And Councillor McPherson's right, there's a formula around that where we pay $2.90 per swim if they're members of the public. If those pools are being used by swim clubs, then they have private arrangements with the school operator, but the school still provide us with those figures so we know how many people are swimming competitively and socially around Hamilton. Essentially our contracts on the numbers basis, we've been paying out just around $70,000, remembering that council, I think 2 years ago in the annual plan, actually put the budget up by $20,000 for us to actually review that partner pools program. So some of the expected increases at our current partner pools didn't actually happen. So there is a bit of leeway there. So that does allow us to have those discussions with any other potential partners such as Hamilton Boys High. I would suggest that we take that offline and do that. I'm not sure if you need a resolution around that. So just to give a bit of clarity around those matters.
Can I just ask, given I guess the newly dimensioned relationship with the MOE that's been developed as a result of the high school in the north, coupled with quite a lot of publicity nationally about schools' commitment to pools, and I think Campbell Live ran a very pointy program on that, and there was a lot of media around that and lots of views expressed as a result of that, plus I guess a renewed interest in swimming as a result of some sad statistics over Christmas. Would that time frame also perhaps give you an opportunity to further some discussions with the MOE about other schools across the city? Because I think Councillor McPherson raises a really good issue. We've got schools who've got pools, but maybe there's some other ways we could be using those, sharing costs and stuff. Is that...
well, my understanding is that apart from Hamilton Boys looking at upgrading their pool, we've actually already had those conversations with, and that's why we have the partner pools that we do at the moment. The opportunity for more partner pools is reasonably limited apart from what we've heard today. And generally that, I think talking to the MOE probably wouldn't be the most productive use of our time. It'd be talking to management and the Board of Trustees of each school because of their independence governance arrangements. So just remembering though that the critical issue here is that the school pools are outdoors and where swimming is moving to is actually having indoor facilities as we've discussed prior to lunch.
Right. Okay, look, thanks for that additional information and for taking the time over lunch to not have lunch and to go and provide us with some more information. So now, did you have a question on that, Councillor King?
Yeah, the indoor rec centre at Rotatuna, which I think we've set $4 million aside for, this might be a question for Blair, does that negate the DCs we've taken for infrastructure, sporting facilities in Rotatuna?
No, because that's an operating grant. We won't be owning that facility, so no, it doesn't. DCs are for capital projects, not operating monies.
Okay, thank you. Another question around this?
Yeah, just around point 2. So the options will include short-term requirements for
Swimming capacity.
swimming
So
capacity.
I think the,
We should maybe add that in then, should it be?
Yeah.
Can
Yes.
include a response to a short-term shortfall in pool space. Is that a better way
Yeah.
to say it? Yeah. Okay, number 2.
that include a response to
Okay.
short-term solutions to swimming capacity.
Swimming capacity, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So does that answer your question,
short-
Councillor Forsyth?
Yeah, yes.
Yes.
I just thought it was a
okay.
bit unclear.
Yeah, good.
Thank you. For swimming?
4.
Related to swimming capacity, I'd put. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So Councillor Mallett's, so in order of where these got to, Councillor Forsyth
Yep,
was
deleted,
the
yeah.
number 1,
Yep, withdraw that.
so that's withdrawn, right? Didn't get anywhere. Councillor Mallett, you're number 2, and if you wish to proceed with that one, that would be the motion, and I'd need a seconder for that. And I would be happy to move an amendment, which would be the one at the top, if I had a seconder for that. So, Councillor O'Leary, so have you got a seconder for yours, Councillor Mallett?
Yes.
Who is that?
I will.
Councillor Green is seconding that? Okay. So if you took out Councillor Forsyth's one, could we could get them all on the one screen then, couldn't we? Right. Okay, so the wording's all right there? And just CFO, there's no issues with either of those?
No, not from my perspective, Your Worship.
Right, okay. All right. Okay. All right, so we'll now go to, unless there's any other questions to the General Manager or the CFO? Yes.
Just one question. If we decide after public consultation to demolish the municipal pools, is there funding in the long-term budget for the 670,000 that's required to complete those works?
There would be funding available for you to prioritise to that, yes. The issue would be that you would be getting very close again to your constraint in 2021.
But just following up from that, we could choose which year the demolition took place. We wouldn't necessarily have to do it next year. We would look for that buffer that would be.
I'd ask the General Manager for advice on that.
Yeah, so we can be flexible around that. So the only issue is that we keep the site secure so that no one gets injured or anything like that. And obviously there's a few weeds, we probably need to clean those up so it's aesthetically okay.
Yes, the question?
Yeah, so presumably, just every year we delayed it, there'll be that $10,000 per year maintenance cost, which over time will start to grow, but yeah, okay.
That's correct.
General Manager, that's, that area of land is sort of part of the whole Ferry Bank River Plan area, isn't it? So I guess based on the implementation program and our report on the river, that that's likely to be part of all that planning, whatever the decision is through this consultation on that municipal pools, isn't it?
That's correct.
Yeah, so we'll know in a year or so anyway, so that's timing's actually quite good. Yeah. All right, so no other, yes, question?
Yeah, could I move an amendment?
So you can foreshadow an amendment, yes, if you'd like to let us know what it is.
Including a demolition date.
I think we'd want to have some advice. You're talking about the municipal pool?
Yeah, putting a date on it. It's You've made a decision to demolish it.
No, so,
No, we haven't, no.
no.
If we make a decision to
There
demolish
might
it,
be some,
why
might be
would
some
you leave it
advice
sitting there
required.
empty for years, waiting for a date when it fits into the budget? Let's slot it into the budget
Yeah,
as
then-
part of the motion.
My advice would be to do that
Not
after you've done the consultation.
Yes, are you happy with that, councillor King?
Yep.
Yes, I think that's right. Yeah, and we can make those decisions in June after we've had consultation and heard back from the public on their views on the proposal.
And still get it into the 2015.
30 June, yeah,
Yep.
because then that becomes, yeah, part of the final decision. All right, so any other questions on these things? Right, so I'm going to, the mover of the motions, councillor Mallett, and if councillors are comfortable, you can talk to both of them at the same time. You happy to do that?
Yep.
Right, okay. So, councillor Mallett, you're the mover of the motion.
Thank you. As I said before, the points 1 and points 2, and we've got some other points up there now, but points 1 and points 2 of the original recommendation from the staff both relate to activity that's going to happen at best within 9 to 10 years from now. To the extent there is a potential that council will be involved in building schools, it will scare away any private investment. So I think that if we can remove that shadow from the market, you will be surprised at what the private sector can bring to the table. And secondly, I think we have to sort out the municipal situation immediately, and I don't think we have the capacity to go out and spend all that sort of money on those pools out there anyway.
Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? No? To the amendment or the motion? No? I'll just speak. Sorry, yes, councillor Gallagher, you go.
No, I won't speak.
All right. I might make a couple of comments, seeing as how I've moved the amendment. I think it's really important when we've engaged in really detailed and lengthy discussions with developers in the North Rototuna, which we have over a long period of time, and signed off a plan, bought land and made commitments in relation to that land and collected development contributions, that we do continue to represent that in the documents and the budgets that come out. Because a number of people have relied on those. So I think point number 3 is important. Where it ultimately ends up, I don't know, and that doesn't say anything particular about where it might ultimately end up. But I think that's quite important, because that speaks to how third parties view negotiating when they're discussing matters with us that are of significance. Number 2, in relation, I was uncomfortable with the recommendation in the report, but I'm now comfortable with leaving it open and having an opportunity for the public, particularly in this sector, to give some views. Because if we don't include 1 and 2 in the consultation document, then that's our way of getting the issue out for those in that sector, that swimming and sports sector, to come and give their views. And that to me is pretty critical here, because I could tell from the discussions and the questions, and I think Lance summed it up very well with conundrum, there's some challenges here, budget challenges, but also timing challenges, and is it a genuine response we need to make, are there other options, etc., that really are worthy of discussion amongst the community. If we don't include those in the resolution, they don't get into the consultation document for discussion, and I think that's pretty important. So that's why I'm proposing the amendment, and then we can see what that people have to say, the sector has to say, and then make some firm decisions when we do the budget in the following year. And I think that's a good outcome. So that's why I'm proposing the amendment. Right, we'll go.
Just clarification, if I may. Obviously, with regard to municipal pools, yes, we accept that there's a point at which council makes a decision for permanent closure. I'll just obviously take the opportunity to publicly state that, without sitting on a fence, I have an open mind in the sense that I want the groups to have the final opportunity to come and, put up an alternative proposal, and certainly even in the context of a proposed riverbank development, all right? So while I think probably we are heading down a particular track, I hope that through the consultation, just because we're putting out a proposal for closure, obviously I hope that we have an open mind in terms of receiving proposals, particularly around the financial and alternative funding options. And I know that there has been some work, a lot of work that's been done. I'm obviously not sure in terms of the Save the Munis group, how far they've progressed with that.
Right, thank you. Okay, Councillor Millett, you have right of reply?
No, fine.
Okay, all right, we're going to vote on the amendment.
On the amendment.
The amendment.
Oh, sorry. Voted the wrong way.
Do you need it reset?
See whether the result's what you like.
Can we reset it, please? Thank you. All right, we're voting now on the amendment.
The amendments carried 10 votes to 2.
Okay, so I'll now put that as the motion. We're voting on it as the motion.
This is the motion, right?
Yes, it's now the motion. Yes. Okay. Thank you,
Motion is
Lance,
carried
for all your
unanimously.
work. Thank you, Matthew. Dee. Okay, the next item is to do with sports fields. And that is Sports Parks, page 23. So, Lance, Sally, welcome along, Sally. So are there some points you want to raise here, Lance, or is it questions?
Just briefly, Your Worship, I think the report, well, I hope the report's reasonably self-explanatory. It does get a little bit complicated. The option which Councillors asked us to come back with, and I think Councillor McPherson actually suggested it, was a staged development of Rototuna Sports Park, and some upgrades to existing fields was really, I think, the halfway house type option is option 3, and option 1 is developing all the fields at Rototuna and 6 of the priority 1 fields for upgrade. And so just quickly stepping through those, the option 1 would go a significant way to meeting our predicted capacity needs, bearing in mind it's still suggested that it's in years 9 and 10 of the LTP, $6.8 million for capex. Option 2 is just developing the 5 fields at Rototuna and no upgrade to current fields. That would only go part way to meeting predicted capacity needs. And they really the balanced approach, the staged development of Rototuna and some upgrade of 6 of the priority 1 current fields for $4.7 million would also only go part way to meeting the predicted capacity needs. Just a couple of things you probably need to be aware of. We've just highlighted in the report there's a few qualifiers around the staged approach to Rototuna. It provides a few challenges where you'd build 2 fields and then essentially we'd have to get the contractor to come back later on. So there's a whole bunch of engineering sequential issues related to that, and then we've also put in some of the potential environmental negative impacts of that, and potentially some reverse sensitivity issues too. If you have half of it developed, a whole lot of houses are built, and then you come back and develop the rest of it later on. And there's likely to be some increase in costs by staging that as well. I think another key point is having to, you can't close a whole bunch of our current fields at the same time to upgrade them, because then we cut out that capacity for that period. So that has to be staged over a number of years. So I just wanted to highlight that fact. So, and you probably see the staff's recommendation, and I'm not sure what the situation is now, Paul, with looking at the old scoreboard, how we've been going, whether it's still affordable or not. The staff's our recommendation was that was really to develop all of Rototuna and do some of the upgrade of existing fields, but obviously we've given a range of options which council can consider.
Okay, so I might just ask the CFO, what based on the recommendation made by Lance, what does that look like? Let's start with that.
Sorry, can we just go? Sorry, Julie, but
Yeah.
when we did the vote on the aquatics, I assume that changed.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen that. So is what you're showing us now with the aquatics decision in it,
This now includes the aquatics decision.
But not what,
And we're just preparing or have, yep, no, thank you, Brett. We now have the numbers that are here for the sports field proposal as well.
okay, so that's a bit confusing
Okay.
because we
So-
didn't
so-
actually...
Point of order, we did see the budget with the effects of the aquatics.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
Yeah, we do.
Did we? Earlier on?
Yeah,
Yep.
we do.
Oh, okay.
So I've asked the CFO to tell us what are the consequences of the staff recommendation on sports parks being included in the budget, and if you could just explain that to us. Thank you.
Okay. The sports parks proposal would see an increase in debt starting in 2022 and running through to 2025. That increase in debt by 2025 is around about $10 million. And in 2022 is in the $100,000. That reflects the profile, spending profile that is in the case. From a balanced budget point of view, the balanced budget again is affected from 2022, and in that case only by $2,000. That's obviously the interest towards the end of the year, and then by 2025 the surplus will have dropped from $25 million being a positive surplus to $24,600,000. So it's about $400,000 per annum net change there. The debt to revenue ratio will have gone from 172% to 175%, and still have some capacity left in that last year at 2025.
What about for the preceding years? What does it do to
Yep.
ratio?
So the ratio in 2022 is the same, in 2023 is basically the same. There's obviously rounding coming into play there. By 2024 that has moved to 2% difference, and by 2025 that's 3% difference.
Okay, so it's not affecting the 2021
No,
position?
it's not.
No, okay, all right. So any questions on the finances? No? Yes.
Yeah, so starting from what we got at the start of the day, the decisions we've made so far this meeting, including what Lance has suggested but which hasn't been voted on yet, 2022, we had an overall debt of, at the beginning of the day, 471. What are we at now, 2022?
475, 358. By the end of the 10 years, the debt has risen from 464,835 to 486,402. Still well within the 200% at that point.
So 464 to 4 what?
486. So it's approximately a $20 million increase.
Okay, thank you.
And that includes all the cumulative interest costs and those sort of things.
And the figures are unchanged, are they, from 2020, prior to 2021? There's no...
In 2021, because we took out the targeted rates,
Yes.
the debt has gone from $5,293,000 in the buffer
Yep.
to $1,682,000.
Right, so what does that do to the total overall debt figure?
Total overall debt has gone from $463 million in 2021 to $466,900.
And that 2021 was the targeted rate coming out?
That was driven by the targeted rate coming out, that's
Yep,
correct.
okay, all right, thank you. Right, so questions on the GM or to the CFO on any of this matter?
I've got a question to the CFO. Now, in all those years from 17 onwards, we're in surplus. We are charging, and I haven't got the figure in front of me, but I guess it's about $60 million a year out of our revenue towards depreciation.
That's correct.
Now, some of that $60 million will obviously go into renewals and replacement of existing assets. But there will be a balance left, presumably, because there's depreciation charges on long-term assets that will not need to have any renewals done in the 10-year cycle. Do we use that remaining balance to reduce debt, or do we put that aside into another bank account so that it's there to meet those renewals when they fall due?
That is paid back off debt, and it's part of the recycling of debt process that we use. We don't have reserve funding of depreciation like there used to be for councils.
Just following on that too, we've had information prior that says that in terms of our recycling of debt, which is the way we manage financing costs, we run at about a 10-year.
That's correct, Your Worship.
Yes, so borrow and within 10 years we've repaid and recycled, which is could I suggest a very short time frame? I'm not sure the public are aware how quickly the debt gets paid back. Do you know what other councils run?
I'm afraid I don't, Your Worship.
Okay, I might have a look at that. All right, that's good. Okay, so any other questions on sports parks, or is it the afternoon siesta time?
Oh.
Good. Councillor Mallett, you're awake. What is the question?
Rototuna Sport Development, second to last bullet point, so page 25, sorry, Lance. The additional cost to council, you got where I'm at?
What
Yep.
page, sorry?
Page 25, to develop the Rototuna Sports Park
Yes.
is 4.8 million over 4 years. That's not 4.8 million per year. That's
No,
so roughly
huge.
1.2 per year.
Total.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Spread over those years. Yeah.
Question, so the development contributions that have been collected in the north, question to Blair really, this is a capital investment where those would be applied. That's how it works.
Yes, and behind the scenes from an accounting sense, they will be applied to that and will obviously address that matter that the General Manager referred to earlier.
Yes, so we've collected them for a purpose, community
And they'll be
infrastructure.
applied to this purpose.
Yeah, and this meets a community infrastructure.
Correct.
Right, okay, okay.
Your Worship,
Yes, Councillor
just had a
McPherson.
question in relation to the Ministry of Education provision at Rototuna High School. You're saying mainly rugby and cricket. And I'm thinking, well, information we've had is that soccer is the biggest sport, and it's also a sport for girls and boys, much more so than the other two. So, which arc did the ministry come out of, or still in? You know, and have we raised this issue? Because it sounds like they're looking on us to provide the soccer fields, and they're going to do the rugby and cricket. That's how I'm reading between the lines there.
Yeah, look, we've had a number of discussions with them, and as those discussions progress, people start making certain assumptions. I suspect they've sort of heard the discussion around it being a potential site for the home of football and that sort of thing. So I think the thing we need to make clear is when we did all the work over the last couple of years, we've looked at the provision of our fields, and not a lot of our fields are used by schools, so they're mainly clubs and the like. Sure, some, and it does get a little bit complex that some school teams do play in club competitions at times.
Saturday morning kids sport, they're all school kids.
Yeah, I mean at the later years of the college, so, you know, like when you're talking years, you know, 11, 12 and 13, so the juniors, yes, that's just the way football's structured, and the codes are structured differently too, so the way that players flow through soccer is different to the way they flow through rugby and that sort of thing, so... So yes, they've got 4 fields there, but they're saying that their needs for 2,500 kids, they won't be met, and they are looking at a partnership here. So there will have to be some quid pro quo, and you know some
Particularly
some
the
shared
quid
use.
part.
Well, I think you know all the signs so far is that they do understand the meaning of partnership, and even when it comes to money too. So I think unfortunately, I think you're away, Councillor McPherson, when we discussed the indoor recreation centre.
No, I was there.
Oh, okay, right, good. So we've had some, you know...
I was just very quiet.
We've had some, you know, and ongoing, and I've got a meeting with Board of Trustees, I think it's next week or the week after, so very positive discussions, but they really want to get that partnership in going, which means that, you know, partnership's a two-way thing, we'll have to work with them as well.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I guess my worry is, say, if they're providing all for a couple of sports and nothing for another sport directly, sure there might be some quid pro quo and sharing of resources later, but that puts extra pressure on us to provide the football fields up front on our ground because no one else is providing. wouldn't it be better to say, well, your fields are should be a mix and so will ours be as they come on stream?
Yeah, so we'll be in these discussions, we'll be getting into that detail and advising them accordingly. Yep. So good point.
So can I just also raise a question about the home of football? And I know that that's been around for some time, and I know that's been a renewed activity in the last, say, let's say 6 months. Is it correct that if that proposition did actually advance, that there is the potential for funding, they have the potential to obtain funding from their parent body or others?
Yes, especially in relation to artificial turf.
Right. So then my next question is, is it your view, or have you considered as part of your recommendation, you know, where that might, giving I guess some commitment enables you to have some certainty about discussions and negotiations with them that might be favourable in a financial sense to the developments up there?
That's correct, but the one thing we're budgeting for is our normal sports parks facility.
Yes.
We're not budgeting or planning for those add-ons if they want to have a regional football centre.
True.
That would be their prerogative. But if there's opportunities to use some of our money or their money to get a better result in some fields which, you know, give you longer playable hours and all that sort of stuff and better quality, then we would explore those without going outside our fiscal parameters.
Yes, okay. So what I'm getting at here is that sometimes you need, is it right that giving some certainty around this will enable you to advance negotiations that could be favourable?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, thanks. Okay, so any other questions on this?
Just one question follow on with the worship's question.
Yep.
So this sport park is solely for football, right? Not for cricket, not for rugby?
No, it's a multi-use park. So
but there's a partnership.
That's yet to be determined, Councillor Young. So, we also need to go through our Reserves Act management plan process, be part of our sports park management plan, and we would, I think Councillor McPherson alluded to it, we would weigh up what the needs are for what code. So if there's one of the football codes, whether it's football, rugby or league, there would still be cricket use on the weekends as well. So we want to get as much use out of our fields as we can. You know, and touch might be one on a certain night as well, where they just have to put down some cones and that sort of thing. So we'd like to see it multi-use.
So any partnership with the Waikato Bay of Plenty Football will be add-on. They're not contributing to that 4.8 million.
No.
Is any artificial turf or grandstand or whatever?
No.
That will be the partnership.
So just be clear, they haven't decided on a site yet. They're still going through a whole process. I'm meeting Mark Christie, their new CEO, next week. You know, I'll hopefully get the lie of the land where they're heading on that. So they've been through a bit of a change process with new CEOs and him getting to know the board and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Forsyth, do you have a question?
Thank you. So the recommendation then you're putting to us here is for option 1?
That's correct.
I wonder if you could help me just understand some of these numbers around options 1 and 3. So you're saying option 1 would start in 2021-22, and would the whole project be completed by 24-25, or is that just when the funding would cease? Or not funding the, yeah.
So my understanding is all the work would be completed and within the 10-year plan. It's just that in option 3 really is option 1 without the upgrade of the other fields.
That's not how I read it.
So option 1 is developing all the fields at Rotatuna and also then upgrading the other 6 fields.
Yes,
and then
over a period of 4 years.
Yeah, and then option 3 is only building the Rotatuna, Rotatuna Sports Park, part of that, and upgrading the existing fields.
Yeah, okay. Yep. Yes, that's what I understood, but the costings around option 3, I wasn't quite so sure about. So on page 28, you're saying option 3, third paragraph down, the minimum first stage of development year 3 funding of 2.53 million would include blah, 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 and then you're saying this initial development, 2.765, would provide a levelled site. So which, have I missed something there? Should that not be the same
Explain the numbers.
number?
Explain the numbers.
So if I can just highlight further up in the report, it identifies that we need to do detailed design and consents of 235,000, which when you add that to 2.5 million comes up with the 2.7. And so that is the initial development total, which is detailed design and completion of the 2 fields on the park.
Okay, thank you. Which is consistent with the other figure on the next page. So, and here's the other part that I'm a little confused about. So you're saying if we support option 3, we would require an additional capital cost of 4.77. So that 4.77, what do you mean additional capital cost?
So at the
29.
moment, all of these proposals are unfunded, and that's why we were saying that they're at additional capital costs because they're not funded within the 10-year
Okay,
plan.
so it's not additional to another...
No,
No.
Okay,
not
so-
additional to another option.
So a capital
Yeah.
cost of 4.77,
Yeah.
which is the 2,765 plus then
Yeah.
the 2 point for the upgrade, okay?
And then you'd finish off the other 3 of the 5 fields in years 11 to 15 of the 30-year infrastructure plan.
So why does that all add up to 7.172?
You're talking about in the second.
Yes, the
second
proposal
box
reduces
on
the
page
net operating
29.
surplus.
I'll let Paul answer that.
Yeah, there's the additional cost of interest and there's also the cumulative debt impact of that. So that's where that comes to, the 7.172.
So just go through that again.
So you've got the inflation impact on what is an uninflated line above at $5.2 million, and then you've also got the interest cost coming through as well, and that makes that a cumulative 7.172. So what we've done for all of these proposals, as we've explained in the past, is that first table shows the uninflated amounts, and the second one shows the impact after taking into account inflation and interest costs.
So contrast that with page 27, which is option 1.
So you've got inflation and interest factored into that.
So again,
4 point as well.
the total of that, total option 1, which is the second to last table before the blue heading on page 27, you've got a total of 7.4 million. By the time you take into account inflation and interest costs, that becomes $10 million, which is driving that movement that we show up on the screen.
Sorry, could you just repeat that last bit again?
So
Which
there's
table am I looking at?
the second to last table before the blue heading that reads option 2.
Okay.
There is a line, blue line, and the total of that line is 7.4 million.
Oh, yes.
And then if you have a look at the table immediately below that, you can see the impact of the interest cost and the inflation and the cumulative debt comes 10.106.
Okay, so now, please correct me if I'm wrong, and I know you will. So does that mean that if you were to compare apples with apples, option 1, the real cost of that would be 10.1, and option 3, the real cost of that with inflation, etc., is 7.1. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you're getting what?
Okay.
You're getting more in option 1. And what are you getting more of? You're getting completed Rototuna fields, which is how many fields?
6.
So that is 5 fields. Completed at Rototuna is 5 fields, and
Yes.
then you get the upgrade of the 6 existing fields.
For your 10 million in total.
For your 10,
For
but the other one's got 2 fields for 7.
Yes,
Yes.
right?
So it's just 2 fields at Rototuna,
Plus
and
Yeah,
then
and the
the
upgrades.
other six grounds upgraded.
Okay.
So the upgrading of the grounds is 6, irrespective of, yeah, okay. Mhm. All right, are you clear, Margaret,
Yes,
on that?
thank you.
Yeah. Right. Any other questions? No?
This might sound a bit
Yep.
simplistic, but can't you just go outside the city boundary and buy a flat, free draining sand-based farm of 50 hectares for 3 million and flatten it off and put 50 sports fields on it? A sports field a hectare. I mean, it's very simplistic, but it just seems an incredible amount of money to be fixing sports fields we already have. which we can already play on a lot of them. Aren't you almost better off having twice as many sports fields and not having them free draining, so you get less use on them? And, it probably doesn't even require an answer because.
Yeah, I think if you did the maths, it wouldn't be any cheaper doing what you're saying, especially on the outskirts of Hamilton. And then you run into zoning issues and a whole bunch of things. So we actually did buy a farm at Rototuna, within the city boundaries. So that's probably why it's, the land is expensive. And,
The land's expensive around the boundary too, I suppose.
yeah, and when councils planned ahead for sports fields, we have looked at soil types and area of need and all that sort of thing. But we have got some challenging soil types across Hamilton with, 40-odd% of our fields are peat, and that does provide a whole bunch of issues. Dry as anything in summer and as wet as a sponge in winter. So irrigation and drainage, whereas, there might be other parts of the city or New Zealand where you need drainage but you don't need irrigation. So that provides the challenges for us. It becomes a bit of a science, sports fields, but it is quite complex and depending on the soil type. That is quite a, it's peat soil up there, but with working with the MOE, with everything they're doing, if you had the timing right, there would be synergies, but all the planning that Chris's team are doing with MOE people about and the developers dewatering the site is quite important at this stage. Work that you probably observe that's going on now. So they're well aware of the need to get those sports fields dewatered.
Okay, so probably no advantage going and buying a farm. Sounds good. Right. Any other questions? No? Right, is there a motion?
I'll move the recommendation.
The Deputy Mayor is moving the recommendation. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Young. Any other?
Second amendment.
What's your amendment?
Option 3.
Option 3. So how would that be expressed? And what would be, we'll just ask the CFO consequences of that. It would show us on the screen once they've typed that up. So how would that resolution be crafted, Lance, for option 3?
I'm just getting my calculator out to add up the figures. So,
or would it be sufficient to say that the council approve the program of work, or allocate in the budget the program of work and funding as outlined in option 3, something like that, rather than fiddling around with the calculator and stuff?
Yeah, Rototuna Sports Park stage development and upgrade of existing option.
Is that enough?
yes, I think it's clear from what's in the report.
Option 3, you've got that, which is the Rototuna Sports Park stage development. If you could, yeah. An upgrade of existing fields.
Your Worship, it'll be the same motion as up the top, the Chesterman motion.
Yes.
But replacing the figures for 2.765 million for Rototuna, and then the 2.005 in the second bit remains the same. 2.765 million. And then the bottom one stays the same.
You may want to add, Lance, something about the staged development.
Yeah. For the staged development of the Rototuna sports fields.
Yes, for the 2 fields.
Yes. It's in the Forsyth one, Jude. Yeah, stage there, yeah.
So you can take out that.
And the years would be 23, 24, is that right?
That's right.
Well, Lance, you do have numbers on the 21,
21,
22 year.
Oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Right, can we just see what the
Can I
finance...
have a question?
Yes.
I just want to ask one thing. For that 2.765 million is for 2 sport fields, right?
Yeah.
So what if we going to develop the other 3 in a later stage? Do you think the remaining amount, $2 million, will be enough for that 3 additional fields?
If you stage it and do it, say, 3 or 4 years later, getting into years 11 to 15 of the 30-year infrastructure plan, we suggest that it will probably be a little bit more expensive. We in the time we had, we couldn't nail those figures down exactly, but you might be looking at plus 5 to 10% with inflationary costs. It'll be hard to lock in a contract and have a second stage of it 4 years ahead without an inflationary clause in that. And there will be some, obviously, what we call start-up costs again too.
Would that affect any partnership with the football, or if it's just 2 fields?
I don't think that would be their ideal option.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
What would happen to the balance of it? You'd have a couple of sports fields and then the rest is like a park. Would you have to level it all out?
It'd be like Mangaiti Park. We just run a rotary slasher over it 4 or 5 times a year, and it'll be a bit rough and people could fly a kite.
Okay.
Throw frisbees.
Walk their dogs.
Throw frisbees and walk dogs. And,
Yeah, okay.
yeah.
You wouldn't graze stock or anything on it?
Well, you could, but
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay.
yeah.
Is the Councillor King listening, or is he having another meeting over there?
I don't know. A lot of conversations go on. All right, so could we just have a look, CFO, at the amendment? What does that sort of do? Just tell us the differences, I guess.
Okay, the key difference is at the end of the 10 years, the debt will be approximately $3 million improved.
$300?
$3 million.
Oh, $3 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
So 483, and that therefore leaves $3 million more in the debt buffer, if you like. And then on the balancing the books line, the surpluses over those last few years improves by about $200,000 in cumulative total across that time. So it's marginal.
And
but
there's no movement on the ratios because it's marginal.
Just go back to the top.
Whose phone's that?
That's my iPad. I have no idea what it did.
Pour some water on it.
Is it
So if I can answer Her Worship's question first, and then I'll answer Councillor Mallett's. The first question was, what does that do to the margin of debt down here? It does move it by 1%, but we're talking around here, around in the margin of rounding now, due to the scale. And then Councillor Mallett's question.
So on the top one, the debt 2025, we started the day at 464 million,
That's right.
464 million, am I right? Is that on your thing?
Yeah, 464.
No, that's no longer on here because we're showing where
Yes,
we are just
You're
prior.
correct, Councillor
Yep.
Mallett. It started
Okay,
on
and
our
what
sheet
is
at
it now?
464.
483. So this option is,
So we're about 20 million up.
yeah, this option's about $17 million, whereas the other option was $20 million.
Okay. And sorry, we started the day at 100, and in 2025, we started the day at 168%. Where are we now?
174%, if I recall correctly. Yes,
It's the black figure, isn't it?
that's correct.
Okay, okay. Any other questions on the finances? Yes.
Do either of these options allow us to complete our obligations that we have in terms of those earlier, the earlier mention of the DCs that we had collected?
I'll defer to Blair, if I may.
I think, sorry, what's your question? Sorry, Councillor Pascoe?
We have some DCs that we collected under the old legislation
Yes.
for work at Rototuna.
For community infrastructure at Rototuna, yep.
And my question is, does either of these two options, or does one or the other of the options complete our obligations in terms of those DCs that have previously been collected?
They're both the same, aren't they? So, in terms of community infrastructure.
Yes, from my understanding, I think these are more primarily reserves related as opposed to community infrastructure. So these are more the development of the land as opposed to the building of community facilities. So they are somewhat different. So simple answer, no.
No. Right.
The aquatic previously resolved would. This is more around reserves. So we have 6 categories. Reserves is one of those in development contributions.
So has the DCs been collected for this? Sports parks?
We have collected DCs for the land acquisition, which we obviously own and buy.
Yes.
Purchase. We don't have any issues with the reserves portion of DCs. We have sufficient capital program within the area of Rototuna to cover the monies collected in development contributions.
I don't think that's quite your question, though, is it? Did we collect DCs for this?
We do collect DCs for this under the category of reserves.
Right, and we still collect
That's
DCs
correct.
for that.
And we're still permitted to collect those as well.
And both these qualify in
Correct.
that category.
And the law still allows us to collect for that in the future as well.
Okay. Yeah.
So putting a building on one of those land and calling it a community building,
There may be an element of
that could be a way of valid. Well, I'm looking for the word to validate that obligation.
I think we would look to see the elements that we could categorise as community infrastructure. We would do so, but I think the bulk of this is the development of the land, and I think we need to be clear that that's what's occurring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Blair, I paid DCs back then, and the plan was very clear about what percentages went to what facilities.
Yes, yes, and then that's entirely legitimate, although we collect development contributions.
It's not anymore, but it was then.
Yes, and what we did at the time was lawful. The law has since changed, but it still allows us to continue the way we lawfully collected DCs under those conditions.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it wasn't lawful. I'm suggesting our obligations were very clearly laid out then as to what went where, to what facilities.
Correct, and I guess the advice I'm giving you here is that the decisions that we've made today, provided we follow through with those, would allow us to then meet the obligations that we've made back in the, back in the previous.
So to be clear about this, either of these options in relation to sports fields would meet the obligations we've had in the past in relation to the allocation of DCs we've collected.
For sports park
For this topic?
Yes.
Right, okay. Can I ask you, Lance, what are your main reasons for not recommending option 3? Given that it is a cheaper, if you like, option, why did you not recommend that one over option 1?
Because the need is for both to happen. We need new fields by 2021, and we also need a upgrading of the playable hours on our current fields immediately, because if you look at the deficit we have in training hours, that's immediate, that is now, and that will increase. So by doing both, we will basically accommodate the capacity needs more fully than option 3.
Right, and those capacity needs have been assisted by independent reports, including the regional infrastructure report and then the OPIS report as well.
We had our own report done, detailed analysis of sports field use and capacity need with conservative growth figures in it, and then we've had the regional sports facilities plan. We've also had some OPIS doing further work around estimating all the costs involved and timing of that.
Okay, so you're saying that option 3 does not meet the recommendations in that analysis done by those external people?
No, only partly.
Partly, yeah. Okay. Right, okay, thank you. Right, any other questions on this?
Where does this fit in with government legislation on core infrastructure? Sports fields.
The legislation talks about having regard to various matters, including recreation, etc., etc. So it's council's choice.
Thank you.
Okay, can you put the resolutions up, thanks?
Sorry, I did have it's probably slightly philosophical question, but all the studies you say show the need for
the extra parks, and I accept that. But in other areas, we're not getting the same recommendations from council. And that's what worries me about the full expenditure in this area, Lance. You know, the indoor recreation thing, perhaps the pool thing too. Why is this, effectively you're saying to us this is a higher priority than those other two recreation areas?
So which ones, which
Sorry,
other recreations areas?
the recommendation, option one,
Yes.
was the higher expenditure on the Rototuna sports parks.
Then
Or-
what
or two.
other areas did you say?
Yeah, that other, I'm not talking about other geographical areas, I'm talking about other areas of recreation, the indoor recreation,
Oh.
I mentioned, or the
swimming pool.
sport, swimming pools.
Well, we made recommendations around indoor recreation.
yes.
You've passed some resolutions to that, which is one of the forecourt indoor recreation centres in this 10 years, and then in our 11 to 30 years of the 30-year infrastructure plan, then there's some more funding being put into that for indoor recreation from council, and also with aquatics. So I think when you looked at the priorities that we presented on February the 4th, we had prioritised indoor recreation and aquatics before sports fields. Yes, the sums are different, but I think we did prioritise those other ones before sports fields. Unfortunately, you know, these ones have had to come back after some other considerations of unfunded projects were made on February the 4th, and you're looking at, you know, the end of the LTP rather than, you know, the mid-years.
So I think that answers your question, that there has been
Yeah,
prioritisation and funding allowed. I think that's what I'm hearing.
And what
it's
we've
the
tried-
amounts probably,
Yes.
which
and what
you-
we've tried to do is present options for council to consider,
Yeah.
and all of those.
Can I just check that the sports fields serve a dual purpose, though, or more than really a dual purpose, because they're a park land area
So-
as well. So open to anyone, anytime to do anything on, except when there's sports games, obviously on the fields. But
Yeah, dog walking areas, you know. The Rototuna one's also going to have a large swale area with raupo and pukekos, and
Right.
you know, so it's going to have an environmental side to it. It's going to have walkways through it. It's going to have a playground,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of amenity value to it, and you know, some groves of carefully planted trees, and you know, so there's a lot of amenity value as well as and use, not just organised sport. So. And also our green lungs of the city and all that sort of stuff. So.
yeah, so in Councillor Gallagher's absence adds to the green space percentage of the city. So I'm sure that's what he would say if he was here. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that he
It's
was
the
represented.
North Town Belt.
Oh, the North Town Belt, yes, yes. Okay, we'll just make sure that he knows we did say that on his behalf, yeah. Okay, any other questions? Are we sort of clear what we're doing here? Right, we're going to deal with the motion, the amendment first.
Doesn't have a second yet.
Oh, seconder. Who's going to second it?
I'll second to get on the table, Your Worship.
Right, seconded by Councillor McPherson. Right, so we're going to deal with the amendment first, and then, but if you could speak both to the amendment and the motion when you speak, that would be helpful. So do you want to speak, Councillor?
Yes, yes, and I think look, the reason why I've suggested that we go with option 3 and stage the approach is because I do feel that a kind of a precedent, or the way we've behaved and treated with other recreational and sports facilities has been slightly half measured. I'm not suggesting that that's any reason why we should do the same for this, but I think that if we were to look across the city and look across facilities that the city expects and that the people want, then we should be, you know, having some measure of equity, I suppose. The indoor rec centre, although nothing capital has been offered, there's an operating cost of 4 point something or other. I think in the bigger picture, this is a $7 million exercise, and with the pools, that was around about a $4 million contribution as well. So I suppose I'm looking at some sort of financial equity, and I don't really buy the rationale that this has been identified in a regional plan and it's urgent, because that's exactly the same sort of information that has been put before us regarding the indoor rec facilities and our aquatics facilities. And as I said, we haven't gone the whole hog with them. I think this is a good measure to meet some part of the demand. I really am supportive of the second part of both the amendment and the motion, and that we address our existing facilities and sports fields, and we bring those up to par so that we can get more use out of them, or for getting the most out of our existing amenities. And yeah, I think I've already explained my rationale for the first part.
All right. Okay. Any other speakers for or against? No, I'll just briefly speak. I'm going to support the motion. I note that when the staff brought back the list of prioritisation back in February, the meeting we've just had in early February, this was as part of that prioritisation number 4, and Founders Theatre, Indoor Rec Centre, Aquatics and Sports Park developments were the priority order, and then other matters followed that. And I'm listening to that, because the reality is, in a growing city, I think we've made a commitment to embrace that growth, or the majority of councillors have, and said that that's quite important. So one of the problems we have is that if we don't keep pace with that, then we end up with these large tracts of undeveloped areas across the city. What was the point in the first place if that's how you're going to deal with it? There's no point at all. You might as well have not had them in the first place. So I think if you make a commitment, and many of these commitments were made some time ago, as these developments were being developed, decades ago, we made commitments in these areas, and I think we've got to follow them through. The other matter I think is quite important is a lot of these things I look at, what partnerships or opportunities arise as a result of local authorities making a commitment for their portion. And I think all of us have recognised that the way of the future is not on our own. We can't do it anymore on our own, and we need to leverage as much as we can the opportunities that other parties might have or bring to the table, particularly funding. And unless we make some commitments ourselves, we can't open those doors. And I'm very keen that we leverage the financial and other opportunities that area is giving us through MOE, through private sector, and also through potentials with home and football and all of those things. We're not going to get those opportunities unless we make some commitment ourselves. And I think that's quite an important message in a lot of the decisions that we've been making over the last month or so. So I see this as an opportunity as well. Look, I think Councillor Forsyth makes a good point. There is some equity in all this, and I think we have to be cognisant of that. But also, I think that the city in the past, you could say, is, we've been half in and half out. And I'm not so sure that the half in, half out's right, because what happens is the half that's out never gets in. And I don't think that's a good position to be in. So I think if we're going to do it, we do it. All right.
Yes, Your Worship, I do want to speak.
Yep.
Especially, you make some good points, and I don't deny any of that. The half in and half out, that's been true for a lot of things, but there's been some things where we haven't even had half in. And that's where the Councillor Forsyth's equity argument has probably convinced me. I think they're all competing priorities, and we're not going to be able to get any of them fully in, I think is the truth. And cash-wise, we do seem, with the motion, to be favouring one a little bit ahead of the others. And it's the same one, unfortunately, that's been favoured in the past, rather extensively over any of the other recreation options. It is true that the amendment will deliver a half-in for outdoor recreation facilities. That's absolutely true. But look at what has already been provided in the city, in that area, compared with the other two areas that we've been putting up here. I actually don't think this is what we do today is going to be the last word. Obviously, there's the submissions coming in the LTP, but equally, I think that this issue is going to get readdressed both by this council and councils in the near future. I'm certain that there's going to be other people that we can talk to, like you've mentioned, including surrounding councils as well in some of these areas, and we're only really having the first cut at the picture, even though we supposedly only do it every 10 years. This one is going to get done probably every couple of years, to be honest. So I'm not too worried about the exact amounts. I'm probably more worried about the signal we're sending the community and receiving from the community. And I'd prefer that outdoor recreation, indoor recreation, aquatic recreation was sort of shown by us to be somewhat equal in terms of the way we're looking at the priorities. So that's, I guess, in the end why I'd support the amendment.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Councillor Deputy Mayor.
Yes, I move the resolution because I think it is the right thing to do. The difference is really a couple of $1 million. I would argue that the North East generally has been starved of community facilities in a huge growth environment. And I think that if we don't get on and do this, and I might be joking, of course, but why don't we just push everything out another 10 years? Instead of worrying about sports parks, we can consider planning for mobility scooter parkways, because we will have lost that market of young people who want to use these sports fields. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, we're going to vote now on the amendment. On the amendment.
The amendment is lost, 6 votes against and 4 for the amendment.
Okay, thank you. So we're now going to vote on the motion. Okay, thank you.
Motion is carried, 9 votes for and 1 against.
Thank you, Lance. Sally, thank you very much. Okay, so, councillors, do you want to break for morning tea? Oh, morning.
Morning.
No way.
See, I've got my second wind. Shall we go till 12 o'clock tonight? I'm ready to keep going. Yep. So, do you want to break for a cup of tea now, and then when we come back, we've got some resolutions to make in respect of the final budget itself? Do you want to do that? Yes? No?
Due to finish at 4.
Well, we should finish at 4, yes. Do you want to have a break and just carry on?
Thank you.
Right, so what we might do then is we'll take 5 minutes. If you want a cup of tea or coffee, bring it back and we'll just get on with it. 5 minutes, okay?
Yeah, that'll be quick.
Dealing with it, 11 through to 11 really through to the number 16, which is pages 41 through to 103. So obviously from today there have been some there'll be some changes to some of the numbers in here, so
Page 40.
that's accepted, but the question I've got is, are there any questions in relation to the financial statements and the strategy, financial strategy documents and Treasury? Just looking at the list. The forecast assumptions and the disclosure statements, which are all requirements. Are there any specific questions on those? Subject, of course, to some of the numbers will be changed as a result of the resolutions today. So if you have any questions on those, can you please direct them to the CFO? And then we will deal with page 103, which is the property asset sales report. as the final document.
Just for context for councillors, the recommendations are about providing this information to the auditors. So that the resolutions will be that the council releases this information to the auditors in the various stages of that recommendation. But that's the thrust of this next batch of recommendations.
Just in terms of the process then, the auditors who have already been working in the building, so then they will audit the document, page 41 through to 103.
Where are the extra recommendations?
On page 2.
I'm going to put the
But they're going to change
recommendations
because
on
of
the
the change.
screen. Could you put the recommendation on the screen? And then they come back to us again with the audit report on the 25th of March. They get completed. So there's still some numbers that will be changed, obviously, in here from today.
Question.
So we don't need all those headings, though, do we? Or I mean, it's all rather confusing. Can we have numbers, or do you want them to have headings? Oh, okay. Well, they can stay like that, I guess. It's just maybe number them.
Question.
Yes.
Is the process, as far as the audit office is concerned, similar to the same process that they adopt for the for auditing the annual plan, except obviously it's a much longer period that they're looking at this time?
Yes, it is a similar process. They do have additional documents they require as part of this process, being a long-term plan.
Thank you.
Any questions on those? Okay. So I'll move that motion. Seconded by
Happy to
Councillor
second.
Pascoe. Okay. Right, thank you.
What's number 3 say? Sorry, what's number 3 say with regard to rating limits for rate?
That's just removing the wording and recycling because you removed the targeted rate today. So
Oh, okay. Yep.
Oh, yes, to get rid of the recycling.
Some of the documents are financial and some of the documents are narrative, which referenced the previous targeted rate. Now that's been removed, we need to update for that.
Thank you.
Right. I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Pascoe. Is there any discussion, councillors? Right, I'll put that then. We'll go to the board. Okay, so we're voting on that motion.
So can,
Sorry, you
so this is this is finalising this whole document we've done today to go out to audit.
Yes.
Okay, so this is the big yes or no.
The big yes or no is the 25th of March when you agree to release a consultation.
Oh, sorry, but yeah, this is the, in terms of today's discussion,
Yes.
this is the big yes or no.
Yep, that's right.
Yes, yeah. Okay, are we reset? Yep.
We've lost half our team, boys.
Carried 7 votes for and 3 against.
Right, thank you. Right, page 103, asset sales. So, councillors, this is a document you'll be familiar with, which gives us a continual update on assets owned by the council and just the status of those. I don't... Are there any questions on that in particular? That is on page 103 and in particular the table 105. And if there are, then they will be directed depending on what your question is. Yes, Councillor Mallett?
The community facilities, the fourth box down, they all says awaiting the status of these things is they are things that we might want to sell sometime.
Well, if we wanted to sell them,
Yeah.
yes, we could discuss that, and if that was something that you wanted particularly to test, yes,
Okay.
you would.
I guess the headline is proposed property asset sales schedule. So who proposed these asset sales?
Through your worship, I could answer that. I put this list together with my team, and these were properties that were identified that could potentially be considered for sale.
So they no longer have a particular use for the council?
Well, they have a use in terms of their current occupation and so forth, but they are properties that, if you wished, we could investigate further to then bring back to council for its consideration to exit ownership.
So if something's awaiting investigation, does that mean you haven't brought a report forward to council?
Correct.
Okay.
Whereas you will.
We will, if you adopt this list as a part of the LTP, just as you did at the last LTP session, we would bring those forward for your consideration.
Your Worship, can I just remind councillors that Community Facilities is to come back to a briefing. I think Dee and I, back in October, November, at a briefing, we've been asked about the future of these facilities, and came out the back end of some of the other policy work that's been done, and really it was around asking some questions of council. Do we want to be in the game? If we are in the game, then what are we doing? And I think some of the concerns of councillors previously, that a lot of these are old eclectic facilities that we've inherited through various means in the past, and do we want to continue with them in the future? So there was to be a further discussion about where are we heading around those sort of community hall type,
that's
type
right.
things that we've inherited.
And you're going to be ready to bring that to us when?
It was meant to be the briefing, which became an LTP,
So you'll be March.
briefing. So
You'll be
it'll
coming March.
in the imminent future.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Just the Biggs Wiseman's building, that's number, and the box number 6 says hold for financial return. Is there someone in there?
No.
Your Worship, we have some short-term tenants in there at the moment, but it is largely untenanted, and we are working very, very hard to fix that situation and get.
So currently the financial return is not outstanding?
Right at this point, but when it has been tenanted, it's been a very good performing property for us.
Just to be clear, that was the old Michael Hill built.
Michael Hill were one of the tenants on the corner of the site.
Yeah. Okay.
Right, are there any other questions on this list? No? Do you have a question? No?
Doesn't this require a briefing?
Well, what we talk about property assets quite frequently, and I guess what you heard from the General Manager was in relation to number 4, information is going to come forward to us in March about that, and we can make decisions at subsequent council meetings about assets, which we do, as you know, yeah. But I think the important thing is part of the long-term plan process is to give visibility about council-owned assets, you know, again, for the public. And if we identify any particular ones that we want to deal with in a particular way, that we let the public know in advance. Yeah.
The HCC Caro wing, that's
just to the rear and to the left.
Is that where you guys are?
Yeah.
And that's fully tenanted?
Yes, I think it is fully tenanted, but a number of those tenants are community occupancy tenants.
So minimal rent pays?
Yeah, look, we just put that on the list along with the municipal building to say, are there options, you know, do we need to own it? We might be occupier, but do we actually need to own it and so forth? So that we are, to be honest, going through some investigation work on that right now as we speak, and would come back to you on that, but not necessarily as a part of the LTP itself. But it's something for us to evaluate.
So Horatu lifestyle blocks, okay, there's the Waiwhakariki Smart subdivision. Horatu lifestyle block, so what's the rationale for us owning that?
The ownership, I'm not directly au fait with the history. It was part of a larger block of land that was owned for refuse dumping by the Hamilton City Council that sits outside of our boundaries. That is a block of land that is adjoining the old dump site, if you like, that is probably a piece that is saleable in terms of its current condition. We did put this forward at the last LTP for potential sale. The process we went through was to bring that back to the former council for discussion in an informal briefing, and then to a committee, as I recall it, to propose whether to sell or hold. It was agreed at the time by council to hold it. There were some issues with it, and in fact I think this council has been involved in some discussions on that site. There is some issue about the fact that it is right next to a greater piece of land that has some toxic issues that is, you know, currently under light grazing. Also some issues to do with the titles of the land and so forth, so it was decided not to pursue the cost to exit at that stage. But what we're saying here is that it remains on the list and we should always revisit.
So so is the purpose here for us to flag that we want some work done on things?
I think what we're flagging here, as the Mayor said before, under the terms of the LDP, is letting the consultation process notify our constituents that these assets are ones that the council own and that it may consider in the near future or in the life of the LTP as to whether or not it should continue to own it, and it would allow that people that wish to come through in the consultation process to give their view on that. And as I said, after that, the process, once a list is bedded into the LTP, as management, we're then tasked to investigate. We have a bit of a program or a schedule that we work through. We then come to council to discuss each property one by one.
Does it particularly require us to be going through the LTP for this to happen? I mean, this could happen any time, couldn't it?
Correct.
Okay.
Right, any other questions?
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
I just want to ask the Ward Park Arts Centre. Is that the one opposite the Girl High?
Yep. Correct.
So why they say demolition? It's still there, right?
Yes, it's still there. The buildings that are under that Section 5 are buildings that we need to consider very seriously as to whether or not they warrant ongoing maintenance and upkeep in the future because of the condition that they're in, the age, and so forth. So once again, that's an investigation that we need to undertake and then come back to council with a set of information and possible recommendation.
Yes, Councillor King.
So, just trying to get my head around this, what you're saying is if there was properties that we flag, they would then go out for public consultation now with the documents, other documents that are going out, or does it have to go through any public consultation process?
No, I think it's visibility, Councillor King. Yeah, it's visibility. Yeah, and what this is telling us is that the staff are working on, a number of these properties are under investigation to come back to us about what we do or don't do with them, and that's listed here on the schedule. Some properties are under investigation for decommissioning altogether, and those will come back to us for final decision. And some properties, number one, are already approved for sale. The number one block up the top there. And I think we're fully familiar with those. And some have been identified at this stage as to be retained and not under investigation for sale under number two. But if you are identifying something that you want different, state it.
I'm just wondering.
And it'll require investigation and staff to go away and, you know, put it into the program.
Things like Masters Avenue shops, I just struggle to get it, but we really need staff to come back to us with a recommendation and investigation and a briefing around.
Well, I mean, yeah, sure, you can move them around if some of the councillors here support, if the majority of councillors support that being moved out of number 6 and into number 4 or whatever, then you'd need to state this. This is the staff's recommendations on how they're dealing with the property portfolio, which is a schedule that we do see not infrequently.
But if I could stress, Your Worship, this is a signal to you and to people who have an interest in the LTP. We cannot do anything here until we come back to this council with our recommendations and with all the information to support that. So this is not a decision to sell these at this point. It is just merely flagging that they are under consideration.
So,
well, isn't that up to Sean's department to come to us with a recommendation on these?
And they have. This is it.
This is their okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So why are we keeping the Masters Avenue shops? Why have we got them in our portfolio and then recommendation is to do nothing?
Specifics for the Masters Avenue shop is really linked, as I understand it, to the library review and the future of the library at Masters Ave. That's actually the origins of why that shop was purchased in terms of future-proofing, expansion, or otherwise off the library. So, once again, we're in in council's hands on some of these properties where other matters relate. So refuse transfer stations are a really good example of that as well. So if something were to happen, for example, out of the library review that changes the situation, then we come back.
Okay, yeah, I'm satisfied with that. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Mallett?
Sean, the top properties approved for sale, box 1, those, presumably these have been approved for sale, I guess, if that's what the title said?
That's correct.
So I just wonder, and a lot of them were approved for sale quite some time ago.
Correct.
How actively are your people working on it? Because it was seen that they've been approved. I'm in Victoria and the River, I'm aware of that one. Sonning Car Park, I'm aware of that one. The other two,
We, through the chair, if I could just say, we have been extremely active, and we have dedicated massive amount of time into these properties. However, we have come close to it. In fact, one of them we've even had approval to go proceed with the sell, but the purchaser, after we received approval to sell, then backed out of the purchase arrangement. So I can assure you we are working really, really, really hard, but we are governed also by the private sector developers and securing anchor tenants and so forth, which has been problematic.
What's the process for you reporting to council that? I mean,
well, we report into the Business and Investment Subcommittee the property transactions, and then if we actually want to propose a transaction, it goes from B&I Subcommittee through to Finance.
I guess more. That's good. Does the Business and Investment Subcommittee get an update? Like you're saying to people, yep, the land, and just hypothetical, the land behind Outpost, we just can't sell it for $1 million. We're going to have to drop our price. How keen are you to? How keen is the council to sell it? Are you prepared to take 800,000? Da da da. Is that the sort of stuff you do?
That is exactly the process we take. We give you, or the committee through that committee, a indication of what the property was purchased for, if it had been purchased or whatever.
The purpose, you mean?
What the valuation is that we have on it, what the offer is, and so forth. And we give councillors the option to make the choice or the decision, with our recommendation, of course, which might be yes, and our recommendation might sometimes be no. But once again, it's an ultimate decision of council to take.
Okay, I guess because it goes to the Business Investment Committee, other council's not on that and not aware of it, and that's our own fault. We can get those minutes as well.
Well, everyone does get the minutes and so forth. I could just add, Your Worship, if I may, that we have previously done quite extensive workshops on all of these properties, you know, that have taken some hours or an entire morning, where we have gone through with elected members informally all the background on every property, you know, plot by plot, so people sort of understand things before we actually work up a final recommendation.
Deputy Mayor?
Look, I've been asked by Councillor Gallagher, but also for my own satisfaction, in 4 community facilities, there are 2 items, St Peter's Hall and the CAB building. They're part of a heritage precinct down there that borders on the cathedral, and I just wanted that noted so that we didn't think we could rush off and flog off a couple of old buildings at the end of Victoria Street.
I think we heard from the GM that we're not flogging them off, that this is an indication, and that no steps are taken until we've dissected it a million ways.
Correct.
That's fine, I just wanted to identify those 2.
Yes, they're on the church grounds, aren't they?
Well, I'm surprised. I thought they were on church ground.
Well, they're by the church.
They're by the church.
We own the land.
It's freehold land title.
For the general public, they would assume they're on the church ground.
Correct.
Yeah. Any other questions on this? Right. Okay. So there's a resolution that approves the updated asset sales schedule and the recommendations outlined in that report for each category. And I will move that.
I'll second it.
Seconded by the Deputy Mayor.
What, one at a time, Your Worship? Is that what you're doing?
No, I'm intending to, well, I'm just following what the what's in here, which says that council approves the updated asset sales schedule and the recommendations outlined against each of the 7 categories of properties.
Sorry, I'm just looking at the recommendation themselves, which are listed separately.
Well, I'm just following the
page
one
you
under
on?
number 4, so I don't know. How do you
Page
want to deal with
103
this?
and
Who wrote this
104.
report? What do you want us to do?
Your Worship, this is about disclosing the schedule as it currently stands, and that's why the recommendation on page 2,
Right.
number 7, is that the council approves the updated asset sales schedule and
Right.
recommendations, so those can be disclosed as part of the long-term plan.
Well, so the list of recommendations that are all separate in here is not the actual recommendation.
Well, I don't
we're
know.
discussing.
Those are still subject to council approval as the general manager
Yeah, but
outlined.
they're listed one at a time.
So do you
So
want
I'm
us to do them
confused
one
about
at
what
a
we're
time
actually
then, do
doing.
you?
What even page you're on
Do you want us to do them one?
I'm on page 103.
I see the confusion. I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
There's got recommendations here and then there's one back on number 2, which is what I'm following, the schedule I was given. What do you want us to do?
The schedule on 105 and the recommendations on 103 and 104 have been encapsulated into the status, I understand, on that page on 105. So the recommendation on 107, on page 2, number 7 is all encompassing.
Right.
So the question is if there's any changes
You say
that
page 107?
that's right, I misspoke on page 2. I don't know how I could confuse 102, 107 and 2, but I did. So if councillors wish to make a change to the status or the recommendation on the schedule, we need to note those changes and then update that.
So I'm happy.
Sorry, just I've got this report starting. It says 10-year plan, property asset sales, page 103, 104, 105. Page 103 and 104 have a list of those categories, and this is what Dave is talking about. There's a recommendation.
Councillor Mallett,
Hang on.
No,
In
we're
107
really
there's a
clear
schedule.
what it says. We've just been talking all about that.
Yeah, but I've been hearing page numbers coming out.
There's
that I
a
can't
different
see.
agenda paper, which is also
I
got
think you said
something.
102, which confused Gary.
Yep, sorry, my apologies. So the schedule on page 105
Save me.
Yep.
reflects the status, which reflects the recommendations on page 103 and 104.
Yep.
On page 2 at the front is the
I
overarching
took right back to the start.
Yep, it's the overarching recommendation, which it assumes that there's no change to those status in terms of our position on those properties, and that council adopts that asset sales schedule, or approves the asset sales schedule as it stands at the moment. If council wants to make a change, they can make a change to those
It's
statuses.
not even that easy, but not for me anyway, because I came in looking at the schedule and the report and prepared to, I have a different view on, I support some of them and don't support others. So that's why I was asking if we'd go through them one at a time, but
I'm following the master sheet in the front. So my sincere apologies, councillors. So shall we work through them one by one? Because I'm actually happy with the whole schedule. If I wasn't, I would have raised a question and got an answer about it and then made a change to. So I'm actually happy with the whole recommendation, but because of the confusion, let's start with page 103. A property is approved for sale. It's an interesting title, given that there is negotiations going on a lot of these, but let's run with it. The recommendation is to continue to pursue divestment options, and I'm going to move that in relation to, I guess we're calling it category 1, are we?
Yes. Yeah,
Shall I
category 1.
call it that?
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay.
Category 1.
And the Deputy Mayor's seconding that. Is there any amendment to that?
Yeah, possibly, but I'd just like
Right.
to discuss it before I put up an amendment.
Okay.
We've been trying to, depending on the development proposal, and I think we've got past that. I think we're, and I'm open to discussion, we're 18 months in on this council or close to it, and we're struggling to get traction because we're demanding certain, under that, developing on, it has to be a proposal we're happy with. And why can't we just leave it open to the district plan to choose what's going to happen with those sites?
I think it is subject to the district plan, isn't
No,
it?
but
Yes. Your Worship, if I could just add in there, the intent of the original purchase of those land sites, as I understand it by earlier councils many years ago, was that they would be sold only to a developer or a new owner that was going to put something on there that council felt would add value to the city. So that was the original intention. But look, Your Worship, if you don't mind me backtracking a little bit, I do apologise for the fact that there are these recommendation boxes in the heart of the paper.
Right.
The reality is, if we were to work on an approval or an agreement or otherwise to the recommendation on page 2, that the debate that we might have today
Yes.
will still have to be had property by property anyway. So I apologise for the fact that they are in the paper. They shouldn't be there in hindsight. But I think it would be much clearer to agree that the list is a list that is signalling an intention, and that every single item on that list has to come through the full rigour of this council for discussion.
Right. So is a better approach then to satisfy some movement on the schedule that some councillors might want is for me to ask whether a councillor wishes to change a category that you've recommended and that we then vote on that? Would that be easier? And then there's the final one that says schedule. Is that an easier way to do it? Yeah. I suspect so. Yeah, I think so. So I was going to start with you, Councillor, because you had identified there are probably some that you want to query. Look, which were they?
But the thing is, I don't want to move an amendment because I don't want to push the proverbial uphill, but I do want to vote against some parts of it. So if we can, and I'll tell you the parts, 4 and 5, and I'm considering 1 as well, but certainly 4 and 5. That's why I was planning on the sections, that's all.
Right.
I wasn't trying to waste much time.
Categories 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
And I'm not even opposed to all of them in there, but I think the grouping is what worries me.
Right, and bearing in mind that we've heard that in respect of category 4, we're going to be hearing a lot more about this in March.
Yes, so that's why I didn't want to have a great big long debate
no
now.
point, we haven't got the information, but what I'm hearing is it all comes back to us.
Yep.
Most definitely. All right, so, okay, let's go again then. We'll have to deal with them category by category in that case. Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, I just still haven't got my head around category 1.
Yep.
Where we're only going to sell them depending on the developer's proposals.
Absolutely.
Why don't we leave it open to the district plan?
Well, if you want...
in the zoning...
So I'm going to move...
Well, I don't want to get into an amendment. I just wanted a quick bit of... It is the... Normally when you sell a bit of land, it has a zoning on it that says what you can do with it.
Okay, so let me just check. Are the negotiations conducted within the context of the district plan?
Absolutely.
They have to be.
They have to be.
So is there something else you're talking about, Councillor King?
Well, each time we get a proposal for somebody to buy it, then we ask them for the plans of what they're going to put on there, and we sit back and say, no, I don't like that, so we're not going to sell you the land. When
because our land.
Normally you would put a bit of land on the market, it would be zone recreational reserve or retail or
so it is
industrial.
Currently, yeah.
And you would just sell it, and then the person would come up with their...
Everyone's got their
in a true open market, you would then come back to the council with your plans if it...
So my recollection, Councillor King, is if and when proposals come on those, and there haven't been a lot, but there's certainly been lots of talk, when they come, the staff always say your options are this one, nothing, like decline, or sell, just sell it. Who cares? Sell it for the money.
Is it time just to sell it?
So I know that's done on a case-by-case basis. I'm going to the General Manager. Do you have a comment?
Look, Your Worship, I actually think you just covered off the comment I was going to make. When we bring properties to Council for potential sale, yes, we answer the question that you have about what is going to go on the site and what added value will it offer the city and so forth. And we have to answer the question is why did we own the land in the first place? What was our intent? And so we cover all of that off anyway. The council still has the decision at the time to make with whatever proposal we have to sell, whether it likes the property or not. I can only think of one instance where we have said to a potential developer in an informal situation, not an informal situation where the plan that he was presenting didn't fit, and that was way outside the district plan as it was, and so forth. But other proposals that we've had come onto these sites, we have pretty much said, yes, we like your plan, work out your commercial deal. And unfortunately, the commercial realities have never come quite to fruition.
So in summary, there's nothing in the way this is approached that would actually impact on Councillor King's intention behind this. So the way it's written at the moment...
No, not in my view.
Not in the way it's written at the moment, because they will all come back in front of council.
So someone could come along and say, I want to buy it to land bank.
Yes. Right.
And correct, and we would
say
bring
yes
that,
on
and we would bring that to you.
Right. Okay. Does that answer your
that's right,
question?
Yes, thank
Does
you.
that, Councillor Mallett, you have a question?
Yeah, well, just to be clear, then what we're saying is, and what Andrew's trying to say, I think, is that if we decide we want to sell it, and this is where Gordon's going to, hairs and back of Gordon's neck will go up, there's a district plan. The district plan says clearly what can and can't go on there. Other than that, we have no interest in what you do with it. You do what you want with it. You give us the right price. Now, I think Gordon's of a mind that he wants to have some input into what happens to the development, and that's where I think it's wrong, and that's why the thing slows down and stops. Once we sell it, it's someone else's property, and the only restrictions we put on it is those restrictions that are within our district plan.
Ultimately, it comes down to a council decision. Yeah. If we want to sell it, we sell it. If we don't, we don't.
But
Simple as that.
But that's not what this report says. This report says depending on the development proposal.
It says ideal development.
So it's not what the report says, that's what...
So, Your Worship, just to take it a step further from Councillor Mallett's argument, Brooklyn Road, it's about Claudelands. It was purchased for a strategic reason for a business, a motor lodge, whatever, that may well be a great development link with Claudelands. But that land wasn't purchased to become a BP or Z service station. So are you saying we would just flick it off for a gas station?
I'm saying if the council's determined it should be sold...
Councillor Mallett, he's asking Councillor King.
The zoning is on the property.
I think he was asking me, wasn't
I think he said Councillor King.
The zoning is on the property to stop it being a Z station. The zoning is on it for whatever zoning we put on it before we sell it, or whatever we've got on it in our plan, and we've had all the chances in the world to get our zoning right on the new plan on those properties. And so that puts us in control. We can say, no, you're not putting a Z station there.
And that's exactly what we're
The
saying.
district plan says that.
At the end of the day, we all sit around the table. The developers come to us and they say, we want to buy this land and we want to do this on it. And then we all have a turn to say, well, no, I actually don't like that. I'm not going to vote for that. And Gary might say, well, yep, I want to sell it. Let's sell it. It just comes down to numbers.
That's right.
Simple as that.
No, it doesn't. It says
It does.
properties approved for sale, and then it says depending on the developer's proposal.
Yeah, and that's...
And that's not
So
how you sell a
guys,
property.
I think we need to be really clear here with the General Manager. If it is known in the public domain that these properties are available to purchase and or develop, and they're owned by the council, right?
Correct.
Number two, if a person, anyone, approaches you with an offer to purchase it, with no intention to develop, they want to purchase it, do you or would you bring that to the council?
Yes, we would, Your Worship.
And does this,
And we have.
anything in here prevent you from doing that?
I don't believe so, no.
So Councillor King is concerned that, you know, a prospective purchaser may be put off by the narration in here. Is that your experience?
It's not my experience that they're put off by it, but the narration in there, to be clear, is consistent with the earlier instructions of council as to how these properties would be treated and why those properties were actually purchased by council in the first place. And
Yes.
and you will ask us for consistency as why do we own this place, what was our intention,
Yes.
and so forth. So those questions will come up.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to deal with them then one by one. I'll move on page 103. We continue to pursue divestment options in relation to category 1. Have I got a seconder? The Deputy Mayor. Is there any discussion on that? So we'll go to the board and vote on it. Okay.
Carried 9-1.
Right. In relation to category 2, I will move that the properties in category 2 are removed from the possible sales list and retained. And just to check again, General Manager, that that doesn't prevent us in the future from dealing with that or those properties
Correct.
in another way.
If the situation changed in terms of council's other interests in those sites, we would absolutely bring them back.
Okay,
the earliest
thank you.
opportunity.
Is there a seconder? The Deputy Mayor is seconding that. Have you got that?
Yeah,
Okay, so what it says is that the properties listed in category 2 are removed from the possible sales list and retained. Okay, so we'll go to the... Yes, Councillor Mallett's got a question on that.
Just like to understand, why are they no longer going to be sold?
I'm happy to speak to my motion, actually.
Yep.
Do you want me to speak to it?
Just a question.
Someone needs to explain it, yeah.
Well, I'm happy to speak to why I'm happy to move that. Councillor King,
Just a question first.
Yes.
Where are we with Waiwhakariki in the process to move it from being considered to sale?
So just remind me, Lance, so we made the zoning decision has now been resolved and released. And number 2, my recollection was there was a resolution in relation to that to come back sometime in the future.
That's correct. Once the planning matter had been worked through.
Right.
And the other thing to report back on was the where the key infrastructure that was required to allow that land to be subdivided.
Right.
Was that provided for within the LTP, draft LTP, and or was it being provided by a developer in the area?
Right. So those have still got to be worked through now. The decision's only just been released.
So I think if you put this through the recommendation, as I understand it, it may be counter to a previous resolution of council, but Jude might be able to give advice on that.
I'm assuming the General Manager was cognisant of that, so...
Yes, look, I guess what we're saying is that there's no action that we can take at our end until the ultimate decision from other
areas is sorted out.
And once that is, then it can pop back up on the list as well. It's same with the refuse transfer station, recycling station, no different. And no different to other land that comes into council ownership from time to time that then will come up for exit. So.
Right. So this categorisation as of today is as it stands, but there's other things going on that may impact on that, but not yet known or developed up yet. Right. We got a query on what the Lance has raised. Is that? Can someone resolve that? Lance is saying, is this counter to a resolution that was made previously by the council?
Look, I would need to do some research to advise on that.
My understanding is the other day the commissioners came out with a decision on Waiwhakariki, which was a natural reserve or something which could be sold for residential development.
They made a decision on the zoning, correct?
Yeah. Yep. So that was one of the things we were waiting for.
True. It was. Yep.
And there is a resolution.
I thought it was to report back, to be frank. Yeah, I thought it was. So as of today, I'm very comfortable that that's the status as of today, because I don't believe, Lance, I'm remembering the resolution now, not the precise words, but certainly the tenor of it. I don't believe that impacts on this, because it's about bringing back further information once it was available. So I'm happy with the motion. I'm just happy to speak just very briefly to these. The recycling and refuse station are subject to, and we've discussed these, are subject to being part of the negotiations for contracts that are about to expire in relation to rubbish and refuse and how that refuse centre is managed. And I accept the General Manager's information to us in the past, that's Chris, that until such time as we're into a new contract or we know what those negotiations are about, it would be unwise to deal with that land in isolation. And I'm getting a nod. That's been your advice. Right, so I'm accepting that advice from the past. In relation to the Horatu lifestyle blocks, which the previous councillors the councillors who sat on the previous council will recall, days, would it be, of discussion if you totaled them all up about this particular area? Who manages landfills? Chris, you'll know, you're the person that knows most about these, is it? Or Brian, someone, where it's part of an old landfill, it's on the edge of an old landfill, it's got the leach gas, you can't run, you can't grow stock on it. You can run a dog, but you can't grow stock?
You wish,
Other way round, something?
On that specific land you can, but all the land around it is like grazing only.
That's right, because of the gases in the ground.
It's infected with a poisonous plant.
Okay, it's got a poisonous plant in it at the moment. It's an old landfill site, and my recollection of the discussions, which were in open meetings, was that until such time as we have far more clarity on the toxins coming from the land, probably would be best not to sell those blocks, for, I guess, potential liability issues. So that was sort of why we're holding those ones. Toxic stuff, I guess, would be a way of describing it. So that's kind of a bit of background. So that's why I'm quite comfortable with the motion that I've moved.
So in regard to that one, is it simply a matter of alerting any potential purchaser that there are some issues with this land?
Well, we spent a lot of time talking about that, but I think...
well, that just removes all your liability.
Because of the... look, here I'm straying into knowledge that I'm sure staff have far more expertise, but I guess there was a level of caution and conservative approach to risk that the previous council took, which I'm quite happy to maintain because of the moving feast about managing landfill sites that have toxics.
Just seems to me we've got an asset there that
so Chris, can you
completely of no use to the city whatsoever.
I mean, that would be my assessment as well.
Yeah. So to the extent we can free up some cash into that, reduce debt or whatever we want to do with it, it's all we're doing is wasting. I mean, every day that the money's tied up in land rather than off our debt, it's interest the city's paying for no value to the city at all.
Yeah, so look, Councillor Mallett, if there were no toxic issues, I would share your view. I guess it speaks...
I guess that gets reflected in the value, doesn't it?
I suppose it definitely gets reflected in the value. Do you have something to add, Chris, about toxic stuff in landfills?
Yeah, look, I'm struggling to recollect all the details, but I think it was a land adjacent to some
It is.
sites.
It's not those sections
So
themselves, no.
Sites, because the actual sites do have a myriad of pipework and leachate systems and gas collection systems. So I think it's land adjacent, which is
correct.
Risky land.
Yep.
And probably land whose values...
Just the land going into Narrawahira, on the left-hand side as you're going north.
Yeah, that's the old...
It's not that.
No, it's on the other side of the river.
Yeah.
Look, if I could, there were just, when we did this...
Days Park.
when we did this report to councillors, probably 2 years ago now, there were just too many issues that caused concern. There was also an issue of the valuation of the land being such that it wasn't even going to cover the cost of subdividing the title or splitting the title out. It was just one of those areas that was very, very marginal exercise, especially when you had other debatable issues. Now, it will always, whether it's on this list or not, it will always come up from time to time, simply because we hold the file. But there's a lot more time, I think, to go through in terms of the neighbouring land that Chris referred to.
Right, any amendments on this?
The Waiwhakariki, you're taking that off the sales list?
I'm happy to move Waiwhakariki in category 2 because as we've heard from the General Manager, some other matters are getting resolved and it's on a track to come back to us.
And we can just simply by...
So as of today, that work hasn't been completed.
So simply by a motion at that stage we can move it back to sale?
If we wanted to change it, yes, we could, yes.
Applies to any of the pieces of land.
Any of them, yeah. All right, any amendments on this? No? Okay, we're going to vote on it?
Here. What are we doing?
Right. Checking I've got everybody in the room.
Oh, this is the one no longer selling. This is 2.
Dave?
Don't talk to me, talk to the mayor.
Oh, I'm pushed.
What's happening?
I'm pushed.
I know, mate, I worked on the road.
I'll set the board again.
I think it's because you had me on talking.
That's why it's the dump, the old dump.
Yeah, and I'm sure that was on the going into Narrawonga.
Geographically challenged.
So mine's got funny flashing lights coming up at me underneath here.
Have you
So
disconnected, Margaret?
Let's do it on the show of hands. All those in favour? Any against? Councillor Mallett, thank you. Right, the next one is number 3. And I'm happy to move the recommendation number 3. And of course that's subject to contract obligations which we are clearly required to adhere to. So the Deputy Mayor's seconding that? Okay. All those in favour? We might do the hands again. There might be something wrong. Any against? No? Thank you. Number 4. Do you have something, Councillor McPherson, you want to deal with in number 4?
Yes, I'd like to encourage everyone to vote against, Your Worship.
I haven't moved a motion.
No.
Perhaps I'm the only person understanding what the report is. I'm beginning to
No, I
wonder.
understand quite what it is. I don't agree with everything.
No, I'm talking about moving these motions. Okay, I'm happy to move 4, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillor McPherson has an amendment. What is it?
No, I don't have an amendment.
Oh, you're just going to vote against
That's
it.
what I was
Okay.
saying.
Can I just
Sorry,
speak?
it's just I can't always hear unless it's in
Can
the
I just speak? I mean, the recommendation for all of these is just for an investigation to be taken.
Yes,
place.
currently under investigation. Yep.
Okay, so Okay, I guess if I may, could I ask Councillor McPherson? You don't want to see an investigation. You've already made your mind up that some of these shouldn't be sold. Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Oh,
and
okay.
I don't want to send that signal that they may be sold.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying.
All right. Anyone else? No? We're going to vote on the show of hands. All those in favour? Any against? Councillor McPherson, thank you.
Can I just ask a question with regard to that?
2, Your Worship.
So 2.
Votes against, I believe.
All those in favour show your hands.
Oh, sorry, I saw Councillor Tooman's hand.
Oh, I just pushed that up.
Oh, see, you could buy something very expensive doing that in an auction.
Right, number...
I just, is there a timeline or any work stream which is going to do the investigation of these things?
Yes,
Or we have to trigger that, do
You
we?
heard from the General Manager, Lance, that he's actually coming back in March to us about a number of these community facilities. So I think that answers your question. And
I don't know if I heard that or not.
that was
Did I
only
hear
a
that?
matter of
Oh, okay.
5 minutes ago. Right. Okay, number 5. I'm happy to move that. So these are properties for investigation for decommissioning. And I just want to check in relation to decommissioning, what is your definition of decommissioning?
The building would probably be destroyed or removed.
Right, and you're going to carry out those investigations, and those are a result of age, condition, etc., and you're going
Correct.
to look at that and bring that back to us. So do you think that number 5, as you've written, actually encapsulates that?
Wouldn't it be better just to say awaiting investigation like the other ones?
I think it should say on
could
completion
kind of
of
preempt you in
investigation,
advance.
any properties identified for decommission.
Your Worship, I think there's been a typo there. I think that's a carryover from a previous recommendation.
Yeah,
So
I think so too.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that.
So what do you think you might say there?
It's exactly the same, isn't it? This one.
That yes, the properties be investigated for possible decommissioning with report back to council for
Approval?
approval.
Or what about report back to council for direction?
For direction.
Because some of them, you know, we might have different views on those.
If I could just elaborate on that, Your Worship, the investigation might well come back and say this property actually does warrant repairs and maintenance
Yes,
being done.
it might do.
Or it might come back with, there's an opportunity to sell, so
Yeah.
who knows, as a part of that investigation. But
Yeah.
the fact that there's a question mark over their ongoing life is really sparking this off.
I think that's what your report's identifying, is that they warrant some investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm happy to move that. The Deputy Mayor's seconding that. I think it should say, well, on completion of investigation, any community facilities, properties identified for decommissioning will be reported back to council for direction. Is that right? Will be reported back, or?
Why don't we just make these awaiting investigation? Because ultimately, you're just going to do an investigation, and your recommendation might be decommissioning, might be bulldozing, might be all sorts of things.
It could be, but I think there's a different category, to be honest.
I don't think there is.
If you'd like to move an amendment, please.
Yeah, that the recommendation be identical to what we did for number 4. Upon completion of investigation.
Are you looking
exactly the same?
Are you looking at decommissioning options for the category 4 properties?
No.
So that is an additional investigation for that category.
But on completion of an investigation, so an investigation will take place. Some of that, and the recommendation from an investigation might be decommissioning, might be keep this thing and just fix it up and we can use it, or it might be we sell it. I don't understand how we distinguish between one and the other. I mean, I'd lump category 4 and category 5 in together.
One of the differences between category 4 and, well, there is land issue differences, I think, with those properties. But look, I think the investigation is, do we decommission or not? And if the answer is no, then what's the alternative future for the site? And that has to come back to council when we're seeking your direction on that alternative future.
So when you are investigating these category 5 properties as opposed to the category 4, if I've got the right numbers, you're doing something extra, aren't you?
It's a building condition.
Assessment, which you're not doing with the other one.
Correct.
Okay, so it's an extra kind of
It's a different category.
Okay. So I'm happy for it to be, I mean, I'm happy to move a motion because it is a separate category. What does it say now? I think it's better to read on completion, on completing the investigation into category 5 properties. Something like that, anyway. I think it's.
Just the report back to council.
Yeah.
Correct.
Staff will report back to
council.
because there's decommissioning or other options.
And it's in the report.
Okay. All right. We're voting on that. We'll just wait till it's cleaned up. Yep, great. Well, should we try the board? Yes. Let's go for it. Oh, I've still got funny lights coming up on my thing. No, there might be hope. Good. So number 6.
Can I just comment on this one?
Yeah, sure.
I know this is in the Municipal Endowment Fund, but I just don't get why we're holding industrial buildings out in
General Manager, why are we retaining these 4 buildings?
The 2 buildings that you're referring to, Iron Mountain and SCA Hygiene, currently give us a very, very good rate of return. And we're reasonably comfortable with the lease tenure on them and so forth. But like any municipal endowment property, irrespective of this list, it's always continually under review and continually assessed and reassessed.
So the revenue obtained from these is used to feed into the general revenue of the council. Right.
So even if we vote this through, if someone comes through and makes an offer on one of them, you would bring it to council. You would consider it, and if you felt it had merit, you would bring it to council.
That's exactly right.
And in fact, that's what happened recently to when you got
We've
an
been
offer and you
doing
brought it to
we've been
us.
doing an awful lot of that lately.
Yes, okay. All right, so I'm happy to move number 6, which wouldn't be status quo, it would be category, is it a hold? What is it?
Well, I'm suggesting it's a no. I am suggesting it's status
No
quo. There's no change to the current policy.
All right.
At this stage.
So there is no change to the category 6 properties. Okay, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. On the board?
Just make sure I've got everybody. Gallagher, 3 out.
We're only with 4 out. 1, 2.
Yeah, Gary.
We've got one more back.
Carried 9-1, yes.
I didn't get a vote last time. Mine didn't work. You can't hold me to 7.
In relation to category 7,
I didn't make a mistake. I did relate.
Do the owners of these properties know that they can buy them out?
Yes, they do.
Thank you. At valuation.
Correct. Category 7 properties are really covered in exactly the same way as the municipal endowment fund, other than the fact that they have these very, very long-term leases, and there's that obligation back to the leaseholders.
Do we collect rates on them?
Yes.
Okay.
okay, so the category 7 properties are available for sale at any time.
Correct.
That satisfactory resolution?
Question on that. Do we normally wait for the lessee to offer to purchase, or could we sell them on the open market?
We have to get agreement from the lessee to, or their agreement that their statement that they do not have any intention to purchase, and thereby release us of our obligation to sell on the open market. And I should add that we do have discussions with some of these tenants along those lines from time to time. In fact, we have a couple going on at the moment.
And second question is, have we actually sold properties on that basis in the past? Where we have sold the lease to an arm's length person?
I could not answer that question, and certainly not in my tenure, but there are a couple of opportunities we're in discussions with now that will head in that direction.
Thank you.
But it's not what the report says.
No.
The domain endowment ones are generous leases, aren't they?
Yeah.
Very generous leases.
Yeah.
But
yes.
The report says only the owner can buy them.
That's correct. First right, first option.
That's not what it says. In the small print over here?
Yes. Yes, but as I say, if we were to get agreement from them, that is an option for us, but generally we don't.
All right, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Voting.
Whoa.
Do we need a
Carried unanimously.
Sorry, Your Worship, just one quick point of clarification.
Yes.
I noticed the BNZ building was not on that list.
That's because it's sold?
It has been sold.
Yes. Yes.
You're a part of that vote, Gordon. It's unanimous.
Was it unanimous?
Yeah.
How much do we get?
26 million.
How much?
No. No.
So I'm not talking about the hotel.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Right, so what's next?
Right, is that the end of yours?
Yes.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Is there anything else you need me to do?
That's public knowledge.
I'm not too sure what the value
What
was,
is?
that's all.
It's public knowledge.
What is?
What anyone's got.
Right, it's now.
Yep.
Isn't it? It's against the law to hide the price if anyone sells a property.
No, I don't think anyone's doing that. I think you gave the wrong figure.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, we don't know what the figure, I don't know what the figure
You
was.
did. And I guess in this forum, unless we've got the absolutely accurate figure, given that Aaron's sitting there,
Well,
could I suggest that we don't
could
say
someone
it?
tell me what it is when they work it out?
I can't remember the
Look in
precise.
look in our bank balance.
Yes, so councillors,
pennies.
there is no more matters to be dealt with in the agenda. So I'm going to close the meeting, but before I do that, just be cognizant of the dates identified in the report on page 8. The documents will go to the audit people who are already working on it. And then there are consultation document and the infrastructure plan have to be, are being worked on, as we heard the other day. And those are going to come forward. Just the other dates on the page 8. Okay? Just so that you know, and all the dates are in your diary. Okay, I declare the meeting closed.